So one thing new that we're going to be doing here on the channel, we're going to be inviting some of my favorite content creators onto the channel to discuss with us their ideas. One of my favorite creators for some time now is none other than Coach D Speaks. Coach D always has an excellent take on things, and like many of us, he sat down and watched the Don Lemon interview with Elon Musk and came away with some great talking points that I think all of us needs to hear. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome to the channel my good friend and yours, Coach D Speaks.
Hey, thanks Tennessee Brando. What's up everyone? I'm Coach D Speaks. So Don Lemon interviewed Elon Musk recently, and I think it's time for us to put to bed some of these talking points from the racist right about racism in America. So let's listen to some of what Elon Musk had to say during this exchange about racism in this country.
I think we should not make this a constant subject. I think we need to move on. I think we should treat people like people.
I absolutely hate when the right makes this argument. Of course, we would love a world where we could move on from race issues and just treat people like people. But that's not the question. The question isn't should we treat people like people or should racism not exist? The question is, given the fact that racism does exist, what is the problem with exposing racists and trying to move toward a place where it isn't a central issue? But then Don asks him a follow-up question, and he rambles into a talking point that no black person is surprised to hear from a privileged white racist.
You don't agree that this country was founded on racism and founded on slavery and in many ways inequities? That still continue on to this day?
I think every country at that time, and I think even today, was extremely racist. Every country, and obviously slavery was present in about half of this country, and was not present in the North. There was racism for sure, but I think we want to look to the future rather than the past, and instead of engaging in constant rehashing of the past, because in fact, if you look at history, if you study history broadly, everyone was a slave. Everyone.
Yes. Well, not everyone was a slave.
No,
but
everyone was a slave.
Okay, but
we are all descended from slaves.
yeah, well,
All of us.
yeah.
It's just a question of when. Was it more recent or less recent? That's it.
So first he starts by downplaying slavery and stating that it was only present in the South. Then he affirms that racism was prevalent in the North. But then he completely dodged the question and then settled for the typical talking points from the right when they don't want to admit that black people in this country have endured more than any other race. He says we're all descendants of slaves and it's just a question of when, more recent or less recent. First of all, the timeline does matter, but more importantly, and hear me out, no other group of slaves or indentured servants in this country have endured slavery, then re-slavery through Jim Crow laws, re-slavery through mass incarceration, housing discrimination through redlining, racial, economic, and social discrimination through typecasting, stop and frisk, police brutality, and white supremacy. These comparisons are wrong, and they're not even close. But then he repeats the talking point about moving on and treating everyone as equals, and when told that that's not reality, he repeats another talking point.
But what future do we want?
we are-
Is this something we want to make a part of our constant dialogue forever, or do we want to say, like, let's just move on and treat everyone, according to just who they are as an individual?
I agree with you with that. That's the ideal. But what the evidence shows is that that's not what's actually in practice.
I think we're doing better than anywhere else.
This reminds me of times when people say, find me another country that's better than ours, as if we're supposed to feel fortunate that we're being oppressed and discriminated against, but not as bad as somewhere else.
That's true. I agree with that. But that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean a lot to a whole lot of people who aren't able to take advantage of the opportunities that you were able to take advantage of, simply because of the color of your skin.
What advantages did my color of my skin give me?
Well, there's an ease that you have in society that many people of color don't. You were able to come to this country voluntarily. There are many people who were not able to come to the country voluntarily. There are people who came here
It's
as
very difficult
slaves.
for me to come here.
And there is a legacy of slavery that still continues on. There's a legacy of racism that still continues on in this country. That's undeniable.
Well, if we keep talking about it nonstop, it will never go away. If we keep making that the central thing, it will never go away.
Someone please explain to these people that Ahmaud Arbery was not talking about racism when he was followed by racists while going for a jog and subsequently murdered by them. Black people going about their business and being harassed by police officers were not talking about racism when they encountered those racist police officers. Black people falsely accused of crimes and convicted by a racist justice system were not talking about racism when they were punished for crimes they did not commit. The black people who recently put their home up for sale and were given a lowball appraisal, who then had to have it reappraised after making it look like white people lived there, were not talking about racism when they were victims of housing discrimination. This is the dumbest argument ever, and it needs to stop. I mean, let's apply this argument to other issues, and let's see if it works. For instance, if we just stop talking about cancer, it'll go away. If we stop talking about sexual assault, it'll go away. If we stop talking about child abuse, it'll just go away. Do you realize how asinine this sounds? Elon Musk epitomizes the idea that one can be extremely rich and concurrently extremely ignorant. Period.
So once again, I'd just like to say thanks to my good friend Coach D for coming on the channel. As always, he's on point. And he's right, folks. We can't just expect racism to magically go away if we stop talking about it. That's not how it works at all. But if you love that video, then I highly recommend you go check out his channel and hit that subscribe button at CoachD_Speaks. You can also find him on Instagram and TikTok as CoachD_Speaks. Go out there, give him a follow, hit the subscribe button because he is one of the best out there. Period.